Bitcoin just completed a major leverage flush. And every single time this happened for Bitcoin, we have seen a major market bottoms getting formed before a new move higher. So that's what we need to discuss within today's update video. But we will discuss much and much more than only that. Like all of the most important Bitcoin charts and price data. Of course, I will give a big update on my trading positions and we will discuss the latest news hitting the markets here. So from there, make sure to first of all subscribe to the channel, watch and like my latest YouTube videos, and then we can dive into the most important content. Since Bitcoin now completed a leverage flush we've not seen before. This entire cycle we've basically seen it 2 times during also these major corrections to the downside for Bitcoin in 2024 and also during the tariffs. We saw a leverage getting wiped out of the markets and a lot of people getting liquidated, and now we've seen the same once again, but on a much bigger scale. About 25 billion in open interest getting wiped out here, and usually after such a big flush, after such a big leverage, after such a big liquidation event, we do see market bottoms getting formed. And it does not really have to mean that we are going to see another move towards all-time highs, but still, also looking into this data, but also a lot more I will be showing next year, I think a bigger bounce for Bitcoin to the top side is going to be likely here. And that is what we need to discuss now. Because Bitcoin, it seems like the smart money is still going long on Bitcoin now. The Bitfinex longs are hitting the highest levels we've seen this entire cycle. So smart money remains to be bullish on Bitcoin. We still have a lot of top side liquidity stacking up. So once Bitcoin is going to start moving, it could short squeeze higher very quickly. And then the question is going to be, where's Bitcoin about to get rejected next? Because if that is going to happen, we are possibly looking into this relief rally scenario. Because after breaking that 50 weekly moving average during Q4 of the post halving year, once Bitcoin bounces back, it usually gets rejected again at the 50 weekly moving average, and then we see a larger move back to the downside in the bear market. So that's what we need to keep in mind. But we still have about a 10k move towards that 50 weekly moving average from off this point for Bitcoin. And looking at the open interest, looking at all of the liquidity that is stacking up above us, and the fact that smart money is going long now, which we can see on the Bitcoin whale versus retail delta, but also on the Bitfinex long charts, we do know once they're going long and once they are going to build off their positions, that is the moment where Bitcoin sees the bottoming stage and the next move higher, like we've seen in 2024 during the tariffs, and now once again here in this correction phase. RSI also hitting the highest levels ever for the Bitfinex longs this entire cycle. So smart money is now going all in on Bitcoin, and I just see a lot of signals in the market that we are going to see a continuation of the bounce, but I'm not saying that Bitcoin is going to make new all-time highs. If that is going to be the case, I most definitely think that the 4-year cycle is going to get broken, but as up until that moment, I still think it's going to be a bearish retest until proven otherwise. But yes, if Bitcoin is going to make new all-time highs from here, and if we are just going to see a much bigger bounce, the 4-year cycle is potentially going to get broken. And yes, that's what we should keep in mind. Bitcoin is hitting some very low levels on the RSI, some historical low levels we've only seen a few times before. It usually happens during the midterm years or just during major black swan events. Now we are of course closing into the midterm year 2026, so if history is going to repeat, we could most definitely see lower RSI level for a longer period. It doesn't have to mean that Bitcoin is going to see a major bounce from up those levels and also sustain the bounce. We could still drop low on the RSI, but it is most definitely very interesting data, I must honestly say. And Bitcoin is indeed getting oversold very fast this time after potentially entering a bear market. Now, something else I'm seeing in the market is that gold is basically preparing another breakout. And if this is going to happen, and if we are going to see another gold breakout like we saw, for example, out of this bullish consolidation, then we are going to have quite the interesting scenario for the Bitcoin versus gold pair. Because if we look into the Bitcoin versus gold pair on the weekly and then on the RSI, so the strength index, we can clearly see that Bitcoin versus gold is already super oversold. So if gold is going to start moving and Bitcoin will stay consolidating or dumping, we are going to hit some historical lows on the Bitcoin versus gold pair. And then I think we are going to find somewhat of a bottom. So I also think if gold is indeed going to break out, there's a high likelihood that Bitcoin is going to move with it, because otherwise it would not make a lot of sense on the indicators in my personal opinion. And this is going to be in chart I will keep my eyes on for the next few days and weeks here, because I think this is going to be a very interesting chart and it will tell us a lot of where Bitcoin will be heading next in the near future. Another very interesting chart is the Coinbase Premium Index, and that shows clearly that the US spot selling is now cooling down. We are slowly getting into spot buying once again, but we need to see it positive to truly flip bullish for Bitcoin also, I think. But that we are seeing the Coinbase Premium Index cooling down a little bit is of course looking very good, because I think this was the biggest reason Bitcoin dropped ever so slightly to the downside here, because during this correction we can see that during heavy US spot selling and during a very negative Coinbase Premium Index, we usually saw the biggest moves for Bitcoin to the downside. So that is something to keep in mind, but now it's cooling down once again. And also BlackRock has been buying Bitcoin for the last 2 days. Of course, yesterday was Thanksgiving, so no new ETF data. Today the US markets will be opened, but for a shorter time period. So we are going to see some ETF flows, and maybe we can see some Thanksgiving inflows for that IBIT ETF. Let's see about exactly that, but definitely very interesting. And if we can see this trend continue, that is going to be super bullish for Bitcoin, I personally think. The rate cut odds are still at 85% there, so it seems like the Fed will be cutting rate in December, which is going to be a bullish outlook for Bitcoin and crypto, I personally think. We have seen lately that initial jobless claims came out a little bit stronger than expected, but the labor market is still kind of weak, and that is why probably the Fed will be cutting rates once again. Also, we are looking into this data, and that is that Trump is probably going to nominate a new Fed chair, and that is going to be Kevin Hassett, according to Polymarket traders. And if that's going to be the case, I think it will be a bullish scenario, because Kevin Hassett is probably going to be a very dovish Fed president in the middle of 2026, because Trump wants lower rates, and he probably also wants the start of QE. So let's see about exactly that, but we definitely have some very important and interesting months ahead of us also with a new Federal Reserve chair. It is going to be a massive decision once again, after of course 2 terms of Powell. And then I do want to give a big update on my Ethereum trading position, because now I'm still on a slight profit, which is absolutely amazing, because we had been in quite a large loss on this Ethereum trade in this major move down. I must honestly say we had been trying to catch the falling knife, but now we are back to our break-even point. If Ethereum is going to pump ever so slightly higher, I will be looking into closing this trading position, because I think it is kind of a risky trade at the current moment. But if you do want to join me, for example, with my Ethereum trading position, make sure to come over to Lbank, where you can now claim a 50% deposit bonus and a generous refund on your first trading position. So a maximum 2.5k deposit bonus and generous refund on your first trading position on Lbank. Make sure to come and check it out if you also do want to open, for example, an Ethereum trading position, or want to trade a lot of different altcoin pairs, because they're listing as one of the fastest exchanges out there. There is new altcoin pairs, so make sure to come and check it out if you're getting interested in that. Of course, in no way financial advice. You should be knowing for yourself where you do want to be trading at, but if you do want to claim this offer on Lbank, make sure to come over to the link in the description on this update video, and there you can be claiming this bonus on Lbank. And from there, I do want to discuss Ethereum in a little bit more depth, since Ethereum is very close to reclaiming the 50 weekly moving average, and I think this is a very important point for Ethereum to truly flip a little bit more bullish again, because from off reclaiming that point, we can maybe be moving towards the bull market support band, and we can see a bigger Ethereum bounce back to the top side. I think, of course, the Bitcoin performance is going to be very important for Ethereum here. If Bitcoin is just going to dump, for example, yes, then Ethereum is probably not going to perform that well. But I think if Bitcoin can see somewhat of a little move higher and Ethereum can reclaim the 50 weekly moving average, we can potentially see a bigger move towards that bull market support band once again. And that would, of course, be a very good scenario for our Ethereum trading position. And then on altcoins, I can be very short about this. I have been talking about this in all of the latest live streams and also all of the latest update videos. I won't be touching altcoins until we have more clarity about the Federal Reserve monetary policy, because we know that QT is going to be ending in about 3 days from here, at the 1st of December, and what is going to be next from there, nobody knows yet, but there's going to be a high chance that, for example, we see QE getting started in, for example, Q1 2026, or a little bit later with possibly a new Federal Reserve precedent. There's still a lot of uncertainty about all of this, but once QE is going to get started, I think altcoins can truly see a prolonged altcoin season, and I think this is going to be needed for others versus Bitcoin, so the smallest altcoins priced in Bitcoin pairs, since we basically have seen that during periods of QT, others versus Bitcoin pairs have only been moving down, only been bleeding down, and during periods of QE, we've basically seen this massive altcoin season in 2021. And I think 2021 is a much more similar to and much more likely to play out than, for example, 2017, because 2017 was totally different. We had a lot less altcoins, we had not a lot of pairs, so there was not that much liquidity needed to even see a big move higher. And also, we saw this big move higher before QT got started, basically during somewhat of a neutral period for the Fed balance sheet. So very important data there. I think now we have much more altcoins, so we need something like QE to get more liquidity into the markets and to truly see somewhat of a prolonged altcoin season. Because we have seen altcoin seasons this cycle during QT, but always very short phases and not sustained rallies to the top side, because there was simply not a lot of liquidity available, I personally think. So I will be waiting for more clarity about the Federal Reserve monetary policy before I will be scaling into altcoin positions once again, and I will potentially be doing some spot buying on altcoins. So make sure to also come over to the VIP Telegram group, because here we'll be updating about all of the important data and more stuff about the Federal Reserve monetary policy, which I think is going to be very important for altcoins. And once I will be scaling into positions and accumulating altcoins, this is the first play where I will let you guys know. So make sure to come over. You can join with the link in the description on this update video to the VIP Telegram group, and then I will see you guys there. And that was also it for today's update video. If you did enjoy today's update video, make sure to subscribe to the channel, watch and like my latest YouTube videos, and then I will see you guys within my next update video tomorrow.